In this video, we're going to be picking up where we left off in part 1 of this video, where we created all of this satin stitch text for our hat. And if you didn't catch part 1, I will leave a link in the video description below to bring you up to speed here. But now what we need to do is we need to route and path our design. And this is a complicated process when you're first learning how to do this. It is a bit complicated. But once you figure it out, yeah, it'll be kind of come second nature to you. Now, other embroidery software that costs money actually takes care of this for us a lot easier than how we have to take care of it ourselves here in InkStitch. But in InkStitch, totally free, so it's worth learning about. So what we need to do when we're stitching for a cap is we need to stitch from the center out. So in this particular design, we'd start with this piece of our S and then come out. So I'm clicking these objects as I go. Then I'm going to stitch this one, and then this one, then this one, and then this one. So I can come in here to Extensions and choose InkStitch, Edit, Restack Objects in the order I just selected. Okay, so now it'll restack all these pieces, and so now you can see here from the bottom up, they all are stitching in the proper order. Okay, so then how do I want this side to stitch? Well, I think I want this to stitch first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and finally our tail. Okay, so I would do the same thing. I would come up here to InkStitch. I would come to Edit, Restack Objects in the order that they were selected. So now these pieces are going to stitch in the order that we anticipate them to. So let's go into Simulator and just double check that and make sure that that's really happening. So you can see that is really happening. Now there's a strange anomaly down here. I don't know what that is, but there was something down there. And now there's not. All right. So anyhow, so it is stitching in the right order. So let's look at that one more time and look at that in a bit more detail. Because, let's pause this. So our S is starting from the bottom, no, starting from the top down. And then it's stitching this piece, and then this piece. So yes, it is stitching in the right order, but watch what happens when I turn on my frogs here. You can see my frogs have absolutely invaded us. Okay, and if I click here on my info tab, you will see that we have 12 jumps here, which we do not want to have an army of 12 frogs for this little design, because you can see we've got all this crisscross stuff happening here. So that's what we're going to take control of in routing and pathing. So step 1, our first piece. This, we need to go into params because it's stitching from the top down currently. We saw that in simulator mode. And we need it to stitch from the bottom up. Okay? And so when it starts at the underlay at the bottom, we know that it is in fact stitching from the bottom up. Now this piece here, we need it to stitch from the top down, which it is. But we need to connect this piece to this piece. Where this piece ends needs to connect to this piece where it begins without a jump stitch. So we select both pieces. We hit our keyboard shortcut. I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut, but I'll show you where it's at. InkStitch, Tool Stroke, Jump Stitch to Stroke. Okay, we click that. Now I use 2 millimeters here. Okay, you can use whatever you want. So what it's saying is any space greater than 2 millimeters, create me a jump stitch, okay, or a running stitch in place of a jump stitch. Okay, then I usually have that set to 0. I have all those checked, and I hit apply. And what you'll see is that we get this path, okay, and that's unexpected because I thought it started here. So now let's go back into params because it does not start there. It starts over here. So that's a problem. So you can see here, it does start over here. So if we swap that out, now you can see it starts the underlay where we need it to start. So this piece needs a jump stitch between this piece. Okay, hit apply. Okay, now for no particular reason, this is what I like to do. I like to pull this off and put it like kind of in the center, and then the same thing down here. So you see now we have that little jump between those two pieces. Okay, but here's where the problem comes in. So this is going to stitch, 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 but now we need to connect this piece to this piece without a jump stitch. So to do that, we need to break this piece, this existing satin, where this begins. So we'll select these two, and we're going to hit Shift B. Then we'll go to our selection tool, which is S, and we're going to choose Shift Control K. Okay, then we're going to take this piece that was created for us, and this piece, and combine them, Control K, and then the same thing with the bottom two rails. Now, I will point this out to you. Watch my other videos on routing and pathing because I talk about the cut satin tool. So if we come in here to extensions, InkStitch, there's an option down here under tool satin where we can set this cut satin column. But we also have to use our commands in InkStitch. So if we go to InkStitch commands, and then we have to attach command to selected objects, and we have to attach where we want the cut satin to happen. I go back and forth. They're both kind of complicated processes, but I have adopted this one, and for various reasons that I won't go into here. But this is my process, so that's what I wanted to show you. So when we cut things apart, okay, when we do that, when we cut things apart, what did we cut apart? This. When we cut things apart, we lose any params that we had previously set. So we'll go back into params here. We will set that to satin. We will add some contour. We will add some zigzag. And we will set the zigzag max stitch length to 2.5 millimeters because that's what I had previously set. Okay, so now everything is good. The one thing that we do need to double check though is this right here. Does it stitch from the top down? So I don't know. So let's figure that out. And it does stitch from the top down. Good, good, good. So that part's good. But now what we need to do, when we break things apart, sometimes we mess things up in the stacking order. Okay, so this is going to stitch, then our little path, then this piece, and then this piece. Okay, so that is in the proper order, so we're good to go. But we need a little running stitch from where this piece finishes, right here at the bottom, to where this piece begins, all the way up top. So we'll add that jump stitch, hit apply. And you'll see that the jump stitch was created over here. Unexpected. That is not what we expected. That's not what we need. What's happening here? Let's go back in and look. It probably has to do with our order of our shapes here. So we have this piece, then our little piece, and then this piece is stitching right here, which is what we want. And then we want this piece to stitch. Yes. Well, let's go back into params here and see what is going on here. Something is definitely going on. So let's go back into params, because that jump stitch should not happen the way it's happening. Okay, so this got switched around. So we'll go back and put our swap rails, and now this is ending at the bottom. So now that that's ending at the bottom, now we can add our jump stroke here. There we go. So now this piece can be brought over here, and this piece can be brought down, and that's just a little thing I do. So there you go. So that's correct, and so that's correct. Okay, we're good up to this point here. So then this piece starts, but it needs to end right over here, right? So we already know that. So we're Shift B, and we're going to go through the same process that we just did. So Shift Control K to break it all apart, then take this piece and bring it back together. Then we need this piece and this piece. We need to bring it back together. We do need to set the params. So let's make sure that the params are set properly here. So we need to set it back to satin. We need to come in and make sure it's contour. We need to make sure it's zigzag. We need to make sure that it's 2.5 millimeters zigzag. And it is stitching from right to left. So all that's good. So then this piece here, we need to double check it. It needs to stitch from the top down. So that's step one. Is it stitching from top down? It is not. So we'll add some contour. We'll add some zigzag. We'll add the 2.5 millimeter zigzag. And then we will come back over here and swap those rails so it is stitching from the top down. Perfect. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need the jump from this piece to this piece. So we'll add that jump in. There we go. Now, it did something unexpected because we kind of messed up. So this piece finishes and then this piece begins. But that's not how it is in the layer stack. So this piece finishes, this piece begins, and then that piece. So now, when we add our jump, now we will get our expected result. So the devil's in the details as far as that goes, right? So there's our jump, right? So I'd just like to move that over. We'll move this over, something like that. That'd be a little jump right there, okay? So that takes care of that. So all that's good up until this point here, okay? So I'm just going to save this. Sometimes I'll save it in the middle of things. So this is going to start and end, but we need this to end. We'll add some new nodes. We're going to end it right there. Okay, Shift B. That breaks that apart. And then we can Shift Control K. And then we want this piece and this piece, and Control that, Control K that piece, Control K this piece, and then let's look at the params. Sometimes I mess up my keyboard shortcut. I don't hit my Control key. I did Alt P there for preferences. Okay, so first thing, we need satin, we need contour, we need zigzag, we need 2.5 millimeter zigzag. Excellent. So now we go back over here and it is stitching in the right order. So all that's correct on that piece. This piece, however, we need to go and change the params on. I already know. Did I do that again? I really did do that again. I brought up preferences again. I do that a lot. So anyhow, we need to revert back to satin. We need to add contour. We need to add zigzag. We need to add 2.5 millimeter zigzag. All that looks good. Now the only thing that we need to do is swap the rails because we need to stitch from the top down. So now it's stitching from the top down and all is good in the world. So that takes care of that. The only other thing we have to do is make sure that when this finishes stitching, this piece is next, and it's currently not. But now it is, and now that is. So then we can go back to our stroke, and we need to apply that. So it's going to finish down here. So I'm just going to move this over a little bit and finish up here. And there you go. So that's how it's going to reach that point, okay? And I just hit Control S to save, and we can move on to the next piece. So this piece ends, and then this piece begins, and then this piece begins. But let's look at the params and make sure that is stitching from right to left, which I'm pretty sure it is. So that is stitching right to left, yes, excellent. But then this piece needs to start down here and come back up here. So we will change that. So we're just going to swap the rails, and it's going to start at the bottom and finish at the top. Okay, so that's all good. Don't have to concern ourselves too much there. So that works. Now, the only thing that we really need to check is, do we need a jump stitch between here and here? So let's just see. I think that space is wider than 2 millimeters. Oh yeah, because it's going to the tip. So we definitely need a jump stitch. I forgot about that. So anyhow, so we'll just modify this. like so. Like I said, I like to bring it to the middle. Don't know why. And I like to bring this back just a little bit. Not right at the tip. We'll do something like that. Okay. So little run. Okay. And then it's going to come back through. And now this one here, what we need it to do is we need it to end right here. Because so this is going to come from here. It's going to come down here and stitch all the way up. And then it's going to come back down. And then it needs to connect right here because that's the last piece it needs to connect to. So we're going to take this piece and this piece, the existing nodes, and break it right there. Okay. And then, of course, we need to break this again, Shift-Control-K. And then we need to take our new pieces up top here and combine those with Control-K. And then our new bottom pieces and Control-K. Right? So there we go. So all that's taken care of now. See that? And that. Okay. Perfect. So that is going to stitch properly, but we have to give it some more params because it lost our params. So no running stitches. We do need to add a contour and of course our zig and our zag and 2.5. Beautiful. And it is stitching from the top down, which we can't have. It needs to switch from the bottom up. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that's stitching in the correct order. So up here for our params, let's double check. Let's double check what's happening there. All right. So let's go into params. And you can see it is going to add some contour, going to add some zigzag, 2.5 millimeters. And we need this to stitch from the top down. Excellent, which it is. Beautiful. Okay, so that's taken care of. So now we need to, from where this finishes and this starts, we need our jump. So let's go ahead and take care of that. Let's zoom in a little bit here. I guess we could turn off snapping. It's not really helping us. All right, so that takes care of that run stitch there. Now we do need to make sure that this piece, so this piece and then this piece is stitching, which it's not. You can see that there. So now that piece is stitching and then this piece is stitching. Really, we need this jump in there. All right, let's see. So now it should be this piece, our running stitch, and then our satin column. And then our top piece. Excellent. So now we do need a jump from here to here, so we'll add that in using my keyboard shortcut, Control-Alt-J. And basically, oh, no, it did add it. I was going to say, sometimes we do that and it doesn't add it, and that's because we don't need it. But in this case, we do need it because it's there. But that is, the distance is greater than 2 millimeters. So then here to here, we don't need a jump because of where it's broken. So we should need a jump there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save what we have up to this point, and let's look at all of that piece of it, a puzzle right there, and let's make sure that it is stitching, at least that much of it is stitching in the right order. So let's go into simulator mode. We do need to go to simulator because params, it's not going to show us those running stitches that we created. Okay, so here we are, starting with our S, right? And I can go through simulator stitch by stitch by just hitting the plus key on my keyboard. Okay, so you can see that's all stitching properly, and then it's going to run up, come down, And then it's going to connect to our next piece, connect to our next piece, connect to our next piece. Okay, so we do have an issue with our satin stitches here, so we do have to fix that, but that's no problem. We'll fix that. And there you go. Okay, so I think all of that is looking good except for some satin stitch issues on that piece right there. So we will go back and fix that, but let's look at our frog situation. Okay, so we have some issues that are unexpected here. I did not expect to see this. So there's an issue right here. And I think, okay, I do think I see what the problem is. So there is a frog there that we don't like. Okay, and that is between the top segment. Okay. And then we probably have a similar issue here. Yes. Frog, frog, frog. Okay, so I do see what's happening here. So that is something that we definitely have to take care of. But let's take care of this. Let's take care of our params here. What is happening here? Okay, it's starting right down there at the bottom. All right. So there's a problem here with our nodes. There's a node on top of a node right there. We discovered it immediately. That's good. So yes, see our zigzag is fixed. Our satin is fixed because of that extra node. Okay, so now let's look at the issue that we're having with our frogs. So what the issue is this piece right here. We have a jump stitch. Why do we have a jump stitch right here? Well, let's look at this in params first, and you'll see what the issue is. So the reason that we have a jump stitch there is because when this column is finishing, see that cursor? You can barely see it. It's finishing on the outside edge. We need it to finish on the inside edge to jump to the next piece because that distance is too great and it'll generate a jump stitch. So what we need to do is, first of all, we can play with these options. We can reverse the first rail and you'll see what happens here. It's now stitching from the bottom up, which we can't have. So let's reverse the second rail. And you can see it's stitching from the top down, but it's finishing stitching on the outside edge, which we can't have. Okay? So what do we do in that situation? Well, let's swap the rails, which obviously we can't have because now it's stitching from the bottom up. But if we now switch the first rail, then it should stitch from the top down, but now it should finish on the inside, and it does. Okay, now that is not a permanent solution. One of those options will be the solution, but that's not the solution all the time, unfortunately. So that's a bit of a trial and error situation. So now we need to move over to the next piece. We probably have the same issue. It's probably finishing on the outside edge because that's why we had a thread jump. So let's see. Is it finishing on the outside edge? It is. So we'll go ahead and reverse the first rail. Now remember, that's the exact same thing we did the first time around. We swapped the rails and see how that didn't solve the problem. So what if we don't swap the rails? It stitches from the top down, which we need, and then it stitches on the inside. Pretty cool stuff, huh? So that is going to change from bit to bit. So let's look right here. What is the situation here? Is that finishing the stitches on the outside? If it is, we're definitely going to have a thread jump. So we could just fast forward through this, and it's finishing on the outside. Bloody heck! So if we change our first rail, we did swap rails, and you can see it's stitching, but we're not going to swap rails. And now it should finish on the inside. And you can see it, in fact, does a finish on the inside. Okay, so now this head is running stitch down. The only other thing really that could be a jump stitch is this. If it ends over here, we got issues. We'll have a jump stitch there. So let's look at that piece. And it ends on the outside. So we will swap the rails and swap the first rail. And you see that it does stitch on the inside now. There we go. Okay. So now in theory, I don't think we should have any frogs. So let's go into simulator mode here and see if we canceled all of our frogs. And then sure enough, I turned out my frogs and we have no frogs. See? Excellent, excellent, excellent. Look at the info palette. You can see here we have no thread jumps there. So took a little getting there, but at the end of the day, we did accomplish what we set out to accomplish. So there we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have this other half of our design. Okay. Now what we're going to do a little bit differently is we're going to come in here and we are going to change the color of these objects. So let's just, any color, shift click on any color. I didn't actually mean to select these two though. Okay, so I did not mean to select those two. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my eyedropper tool, shift key, click on my green to change that back to green. And then this one, same thing. I am going to grab my shift tool and click on this kind of reddish color because I do want that to be a color change. And I guess we need to do the same thing down here. Shift click and color change. There we go. So now these pieces are a different color. And that's basically what you're going to want to do when you're creating this. So because it's a different color, then it's going to automatically do a thread trim because it's a different color. All right. And I just do that not for my machine, but because if we're going to give this to somebody else, most embroidery machines out there don't have automatic thread trimmers, but they will stop and at the color change and allow you to trim the thread and then move on with the rest of the design. Okay. So however you want to handle that, we could, if you want to know how to do this, let's do that real quick. If you don't want to change the color and you're going to assume that your machine will abide by trim commands, then what we could do right here with this object here is we could come in here to InkStitch here and we could do commands, attach commands, and all we're going to do is attach a trim command. Okay, so you see here it says trim, trim right here after sewing this object. Okay, and then we would have a trim command applied to that. So that was the last object that was stitched. Then it would apply a trim before moving on to the next object of the same color. But we'll go ahead and close that out. And then what we can also do is we can come up here to extensions and InkStitch and commands and choose view, and we could display or hide that command. So if we don't want that little icon appearing in our design, it's still there, it's just hidden. Okay. So, but like I said, usually I will go ahead and do a color change here, and that will take care of all machines. Okay. But it's just a little caveat thing. All right, so this piece I believe was the next thing to stitch, and then we needed this to stitch. Okay, but it kind of, so this needs to stitch, and then it needs to come back and end where this thing picks up, right? So we know that. So what we'll do is we'll just come in here and we're going to break this apart. We've already done this a bunch of times. Okay. So and then we'll take this piece and combine them together. And we'll take this piece and combine them together. And we'll go back to this piece. So this piece should stitch and then this piece, which it does. And then this piece, which it does. Excellent. So now all we need is to set the params for this piece. It needs to stitch from left to right. It needs to be satin. We need some contour. We need some zigzag. We need to set our zigzag to 2.5 millimeters. Let's go back over here and we need it to swap the rails. Excellent. Apply and quit. That's taken care of. And then we need to do the same thing over here. Go into params. And we need to make sure it's satin. We need to make sure there's contour. We need to make sure there's zigzag. We need to make sure it's 2.5. And it is stitching from right to left. Excellent. That's the way we need it to. So that's taken care of. So now we need this. We need a little jump from here to here. So we'll add the jump. Take care of that. So yes, so like I said, I just like to move it down here. Oh, what's happening here? Oh, okay. I didn't have my jump stitch. There we go. Pull that back just a touch like I like to. Excellent. And now we need this to stitch. We do need this to stitch from top to bottom, so let's see if it does in our params. It does not, so we'll swap the rails. And now it's stitching top to bottom. So now we can go ahead and add a little jump. Oh no, we don't need to add a jump between these two because it's close enough where it'll just stitch. So we don't need to add a jump. And then this is going to finish off, but then where this one picks up, we will need a jump from here, from this one to this one. So this piece, first of all, should start from the top down. So let's double check that it does. It does. Excellent. So we can move on. So this piece to this piece, we can just add our jump. Excellent. We'll change our path just a little bit here. There we go. So now that's going to come down, and then this needs to stitch from the inside out. It currently does not. I'm almost certain of that. Oh, it does. Surprise, surprise. So it does stitch from the inside out. My bad. All right, so we don't need to do anything there. So, but we do need a little jump from there to there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and add that. Okay, so that is our little jump. Perfect. So that space is greater than 2 millimeters. So that's essentially what it was saying there. And then this, where it's ending and where this is beginning, we do not need a jump, assuming that it's stitching from the top down. So let's go into params and verify that that's what's happening, and that is what's happening. All right, excellent. So now what we should see here is we should see a very nice design. Let's go ahead and save that. So I just hit Control S to save. But let's look at it in simulator mode. And we should see a very nice design now. That trim command that we added, it basically will be ignored for this example. Let's go into look at our info. And you can see we have three jumps. What in the world is happening here? Where are those jumps happening? Okay, so that's a little deceiving. When it says 3 jumps, that's not really what it means. And essentially what it's doing, it's saying we have a start, a stop, and an end. You don't actually see any frogs here along the timeline, so we do not have any thread jumps. That's, like I said, that's just a little bit deceiving, but we do have one thread trim command right? And then we do have a color change. So that's what's kind of throwing that off a little bit. All right. But otherwise, yes, I think that is basically it. So that is the finished design. Now, what I would probably do is I'll probably just come in here and set, because we already have the trim command going. So I'll probably just set that all as one color and call that a day and save it. Because we do have that thread trim command before it starts our next object there. But if we want to look at it one more time in simulator mode here, and now we turn on our frogs, all you can see here, we do have some frogs showing up there. So why do we have frogs showing up there? We should not have frogs showing up. All right, so it's calling that a frog because something's happening here. This should be happening because of it's not picking up our the reason that this is happening. It's not picking up our uh, little run stitches for some reason. Why? Why? So if I don't have nothing selected, that's strange. Let's try that again. Let's go back into simulator mode. Definitely should be picking up. And now it is. No, it's not. It's not picking up on that one. Oh, you know what? I don't have one there. I need one there. Yes, I need one right here. My bad. So we needed that thread jump there because it's going to come to the outside here. I didn't think about that. So this piece here and this piece here, we'll hit apply. We need a little thread jump there, little running stitch. And I kind of forgot about that. So there we go. We'll bring this over here like so. All right, so yes. And then this piece is going to come back to the middle, and then it's going to jump to the outside here and come back, and then this one begins. Yes. So now let's take a look at it. Turn on our thread jumps. Now we do still have some thread jumps here. I do know what's causing that. So, because we had a similar issue right here on the left side, right? So let's back up here, and you can see, first of all, that thread jump right there, that's calling that a thread jump because it's finishing up top here and jumping down, which it shouldn't. So that param has been backwards. But then where's the next issue? And the next thread jump is just a column issue. All right, so first of all, this param is backwards. So it needs, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's stitching from the bottom up. And indeed it is. So we need that to switch from the top down. That will get rid of one of our frogs. And then our next issue was where? Oh, right here. So where this is stopping and this is starting, so this column here just needs to start on the right. It's currently starting on the left. So let's pause that. You'll see here, see how it's starting on the left and coming to the right. So we need to, that opposite. So if we choose reverse the first rail, you can see now it's stitching from the bottom. So we don't want that. So we can't swap rails, but see now it's starting on the left. It devil's in the details, right? So now, when we look at this in simulator mode, now we turn on some frogs, and you see we still have this issue. Why do we have this issue? That shouldn't be happening. And now we have an issue here. That's registering as a jump. Okay, so we still have this issue happening. I don't know why this is happening. Let's look at the params again. It should be stitching from the top down. Thought we had that set. And it is stitching from the top down. So that much is good. It's finishing over here on the left. Oh, okay. Yes, so that run stitch was because we had the params reversed when we first added the run stitch. So now the run stitch is down here. So yes, that will be fine. So that will be fine. But now this is ending at the bottom and it needs to end at the top. Or I guess we could just do that. See if that doesn't fix our problem. Devil's in the details. Let's go back and look. Back on our frogs. And now, seems like we created a bigger mess now. Not sure how that is. Let's back up. So that is a thread jump that shouldn't be happening. The top of our T to the bottom. Okay. So we undo what we did there, but what this is saying is this should be like that. I was just picking the wrong piece. So now we go back into simulator mode. Now we should not see any frogs, except we do have that one. And what is that frog telling us? So we got the satin going on, but we've already passed our frog. What's happening here? And I think what that is actually our thread trim. Yes, because they're both happening at the same time, but it's also showing as a thread jump. Probably because not all embroidery machines do thread trims. So what it's essentially saying is, if you have a thread trim, you will wind up with a thread jump. If your machine does it automatically. So everything else is correct now. So that is finally all repabbed properly. So let's just go ahead and look at a quick preview of our stitches here. Now this takes a little bit to generate, as you probably well know if you're using InkStitch, especially in this latest version of InkStitch. But one thing from my experience is the result that we look at here is pretty darn accurate. So why this is important, if you look here where these satins are and how the connections are, those are going to be pretty darn accurate when they stitch out. So you see here, this one looks like it's just slightly above. That's a good connection there, so I'm happy with that. But you can see here, this is stitching first and then this. You can see that, right? So that's all looking pretty good, how all those connections are. We will look at that one. Maybe we could change that one just a little bit. So let's go ahead and just get rid of that for now. And look and see. Let's go into outline mode now. I'm happy with that. It's not overlapping. I thought maybe it would be overlapping a little bit, but it's not. So the fact that it's not, it's right on the border. I'm happy with that. We're going to just leave that alone for sure. So yes, so there we go. That is our finished cap design. Now, if you want this design, feel free to send us an email. Our email address is in the listing description below. say, hey, could I have the hustle cap design? We'd be happy to send you the InkStitch file for you to experiment with, and the accompanying embroidery files that you could just take right to your embroidery machine and stitch out if you want to. So I will go ahead and stitch this one out and see what it looks like. And then I'll post a picture of it so you can see what this looks like all stitched out. Thanks for watching.